Let's be honest, most of what comes out of Hollywood these days makes a mockery of America, but there's still a place telling stories that remind us why this country is worth celebrating. That place is Angel Studios. Like Sound of Freedom, a powerful true story that exposes the horrors of child trafficking, something to stand for with Mike Rowe, an incredible tribute to ordinary Americans who risked everything to defend liberty. And The Last Rodeo, a heartland drama about a bull riding veteran who comes out of retirement to save his grandson. It's the kind of storytelling Hollywood forgot how to do. Go to angel.com/Charlie and become a premium Angel Guild member today. Support entertainment that builds something worth passing on.
Now streaming on Angel.
Perfect segue for a professor from America's greatest college, Dr. Paul Ray, professor of history from Hillsdale College and war historian. Dr. Ray, great to see you. Thank you for the time. Dr. Ray, what is your analysis of the Russian-Ukrainian war? Do you believe that Putin is going to continue to broker this war against Ukraine?
Yes, I do. I never thought that a ceasefire was at all likely. That having been said, I honor Donald Trump for trying. The number of people being killed is terrible. And I think a ceasefire would be very much in the interest of Ukraine, which is under tremendous pressure because the Ukrainian population is greatly outnumbered by the Russian population. So the potential list of draftees of people that you could actually put into the war is much, much smaller. But I never believed it would happen. And the reason is that I think Putin has gotten himself into a corner where if he ends this war with anything but something that can be represented as a great victory, he will be toast. He has stirred up Russian nationalism, focused it on the Ukraine issue. He has sacrificed innumerable Russian lives at the front. And if he has very little to show for it, it's over for him. I don't think he has room to move. Going in there was one of the stupidest things he could conceivably have done. He thought it was going to be a cakewalk. And what does that say about Russian intelligence? That a country next to them, the language is very similar to Russian, and they can't tell that these people are prepared to fight? That's really quite remarkable. Must be an awful lot of people around Putin who are afraid to tell him the truth. And that's probably still true, I'm afraid.
So, Dr. Ray, it's a phenomenal analysis, but I want to zero in on your answer. You say, yes, he's going to continue brokering it. To what end? Till he reaches Kiev? Till he reaches, the middle point or the center part of the country? So you're saying he's going to keep on brokering it. What would the final objective be, and what would then a reasonable victory for Putin be?
Well, one of the problems is I'm not sure he knows what the final objective is. Oftentimes, countries go to war without a clear understanding of the mission. I think that was true for us in Vietnam 50 years ago. We didn't really quite know what victory would mean and how you can't bring means and ends together unless you know what the end is. Now, I think the original end was to take Kyiv and to install a puppet government that would control the whole country so that you would have a puppet under the Russians. But that's not going to happen. So I don't know what would count as victory. And keep in mind, he has to sell it as a victory to the Russian people, but not just to the Russian people, to that rather narrower group that is powerful in Russia. And he has revved up a kind of ultra-nationalism that won't be satisfied with anything less than a whole lot. So I think he's got himself in a lot of trouble. And I think it's extremely foolish because the only country in the world that has any territorial ambitions vis-a-vis Russia, and I mean the Russia that existed before this war started, is China. It's not widely known, but Russia and China fought a war along the Amur River in 1969, major tank battles. China has a claim to Siberia, or to a good chunk of Siberia. The Russians won that in the middle of the 19th century, and there was a treaty. It's one of the treaties that Chinese children are taught to look upon as the unequal treaties that have to be overturned. So what has Putin done? He has put his country in bed with its greatest potential enemy. He has put it at odds with potential allies, and he has alienated them. I was about to say permanently, but in foreign affairs, there's no such thing as permanently.
And this is so illuminating. So you've said he's made a big mistake and he's kind of got to back up against the wall. He doesn't really know what the objective is. So let's talk about then who he has to win over. The Russian people, sort of, but he's using the more rural, poor Muslim parts as cannon fodder up on the front lines. Who then does he have to win over? Who is the intelligentsia, the Russian ruling class of Moscow and St. Petersburg, that he has to convince that this war was a success? Who are these people?
Okay, there's two Russian intelligentsias, and they're at odds with one another. There's one that's cosmopolitan, relatively Western-oriented, and innumerable Russians have fled Russia because of this war. They're living in Georgia, they're living in Armenia, they're living in Finland, they're living on Cyprus. There are a lot of Russians who look upon this war as a nightmare and who are themselves concerned primarily as patriotic Russians with the Chinese threat. The people that he's got to please are the KGB guys that are his subordinates. And you know, there's quite a few of them, but think of this as an oligarchy of thugs. A lot of them trained by the KGB back in the days when Putin himself was a KGB officer in Dresden in Germany. And a lot of them share his view, which is, you know, the real enemy is the United States. Let me say a little something about that, because the Roman historian Polybius says that when you end a war, you have to think very hard about the defeated opponent. Are they broken in spirit, or do they think that they have lost the war because yielded to circumstances? And his argument is the Carthaginians at the end of the First Punic War have yielded to circumstances. Okay, if they've only yielded circumstances, they are lying in wait for an opportunity to strike back. Think of Germany after World War I. The Germans didn't think they'd been defeated. They thought they had been betrayed from within. And they are looking for the opportunity to strike back. Okay, Russia at the end of the Cold War, it's defeated. It yielded to circumstances. The Soviet Union broke up, and places like Ukraine became independent countries. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, the Stans, Armenia, and so forth. Putin comes from a generation that thinks they were cheated. You know, he refers to the breakup of the Soviet Union as a great geopolitical disaster. So the aim is to put it back together. You know, and if you might wonder, why did the Swedes join NATO? Why did Finland join NATO? The answer is they think that Ukraine is a test and they're next. So he's painted himself into a corner in which there is an ultra-nationalist elite, largely drawn from the army and the old KGB. And he can't afford to give ground.
The USSR never technically lost a war. I mean, there was Afghanistan, but they collapsed and Russians felt that they were taken advantage of in a moment of weakness. And
Yes.
what you're articulating is a ruling class that is very jaded, that was likely in their late 20s and early 30s. They were their formative years when the USSR collapsed. And now they're on top of Russian society, and they hold a memory of great bitterness. Bitterness that this project that they inherited fell apart, and they're trying to reconstitute it. Dr. Ray, how do the youth of Russia feel about all this?
They feel differently. I mean, I said something about the people who fled. I used to chair the board of a little foundation that sends Americans to places and to talk and study people who are being ignored by the press. We sent someone out. This is the Institute of Current World Affairs. We're 100 years old. We sent someone out to visit the expatriates in Georgia, Armenia, etc. Those are all young people, almost all young people. They don't want to be drafted, and they don't want to have anything to do with this particular imperialistic war. And there are lots of them. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of them. If you turn to Russia, here would be the test. If Russian youth really are dedicated to this project, are they volunteering to go fight against Ukraine? I mean, my sense is the cannon fodder that is being fed into that war comes from the periphery, from the poorest regions in Russia, and from the minorities, not from people in St. Petersburg and Moscow. They may talk an ultra-nationalist line, but are they willing to put their lives on the line? I don't see much indication of that. And it strikes me the failure to draft people from Moscow and St. Petersburg and the like is a sign that Putin knows there are limits to his support. In other words, it's one thing to talk it. It's another thing to walk the walk.
Dr. Ray, in closing here, you've painted a very vivid picture of a superpower with a dictator that has made a mistake, and he probably knows it, and he's in a little too deep. That's not a good scenario for the United States of America. So then, I don't want to ask you how should we get involved. Where does that leave us? What are the choices then in front of us, in front of the United States, since Putin has basically gone all in and he has to save face?
Well, we could abandon Ukraine, but if we abandon Ukraine, we may lose our European alliances. They're very much worried about this. And their view is if Ukraine goes down, we're on the front lines. Or we can continue to support them. If we continue to support them, it's going to go on for a considerable period of time. I think the preferable thing is to continue to support them, but I don't think we're in a very good situation here. When this thing started, the Ukrainians could have won. They backfooted the Russians that first 6 months. And had they had the weapons they needed, they might well have been able to push the Russians out. They did push the Russians out of a considerable area at that time. So, it's a little complicated because the situation now, it looks like World War I. You've got these trenches and
That's
a
right.
terrible kind of warfare. But you had a warfare of maneuver right at the beginning. And Joe Biden chose the Vietnam War route, gradual building up rather than hammer them right at the start.
Dr. Ray, phenomenal analysis. I'd love to have you on soon. 7,000 total dead a week per Trump. It's a terrible death toll. I'm afraid this thing is not going to go away anytime soon. Dr. Ray, thank you so much. Everyone should check out charlieforhillsdale.com from Hillsdale College. A phenomenal analysis. Thank you so much.